things weren't back to normal. I started figuring it out later. Let's get back to November. About November of 92, I watched Star Trek The Next Generation episodes religiously. I always wanted to see the new ones that came out because then I could sort of gauge how Brent was doing. And I was concerned about Brent when there was a certain episode that came on called A Fistful of Datas. I could usually tell by looking at an episode how Brent was doing when he made the episode. I noticed that in a fistful of datas, Brent, I saw an expression on his face where he looked like he was going through hell, like he was going through emotional torment. A Fistful of Datas aired in November. When I read data entries, I found out that usually, because Melody kept up with what was going on at Star Trek, she would contact some of the producers, or she had her connections, so she knew a lot of the inside going-ons at Star Trek. She mentioned, I think in one of her commentaries about how things were going at Star Trek, that usually took about 2 months for a television show to air after it was in production. So I presume because A Fistful of Datas aired in November that it was made during the time when Brent gave me 3 weeks of silence. I recall very distinctly that I saw a tremendous amount of emotional pain on his face in that episode. And I thought, oh my God, whatever the reason was, that's what I told myself. When I saw that episode, I realized that something terrible had happened to Brent when he gave me that 3 weeks of silence. I was always curious what it was. I didn't know. He never told me. But I knew whatever it was very difficult for him to give me 3 weeks of silence in September. I could tell by looking at him in the episode of Fistful of Datas. I knew that whatever the reason was, it wasn't because he didn't love me. It was something else. And whatever he went through in September of 92, so that he didn't call me on my birthday or anything, it must have been catastrophic to him. Because he looked catastrophic in A Fistful of Datas. I could tell he went through something terrible. So I got a little concerned about him. I began to suspect there was something fishy going on at Paramount Studios. The reason for that is because I watched the Star Trek The Next Generation episodes religiously. Because that was about the only way I could gauge how he was doing emotionally. And I remember that there was an episode that aired that involved a Moriarty character and the love of his life, who was a woman who had, at that time I had like black hair because I wasn't coloring my hair, and they hired a woman to play the role of Moriarty's wife. His name was Professor Moriarty. The storyline, I can't remember, it was called Ship in a Bottle. That was the name of the episode. And in the storyline, it was about a man who loved a woman tremendously and wanted to marry her and be with her. But there were difficulties. She was portrayed as being brilliant. And obviously they considered me brilliant, these Paramount people, when they looked at my teleplay. As brilliant and beautiful. But I remember that they put some lines in there where she was described as being a bit stuck on herself. I felt like the Star Trek writers were putting in digs on me. Because I did complain to Brent that I felt that there was something fishy going on at Paramount and that they shouldn't have rejected my teleplay. I said, I smell a fish. That's what I told him. Because I know I did a good job on that. And I know that the quality of the writing was higher than most of what I see aired on this show. So I figured there was some fish going on. I didn't have any ill feelings toward Paramount, but I started noticing some strange things with some of the episodes that aired. And there was one writer whose name was Brannon Braga. And it seemed like with the episodes that he wrote, that he was poking fun at me. There was one episode, I can't remember, this was several years later, that he wrote, and he always wrote episodes that seemed to make fun of my Christian state.
I'm over Brannon Braga. I'm not even worried about him now.
And it glorified sex as some sort of, I don't know, I sensed that I had enemies at Paramount. And I suspected that they were behind the trouble that Brent and I were having in our personal relationship. That somebody was trying to undermine us. And I figured it was maybe some jealous writers at Paramount. I sensed that some of the writers at Paramount were jealous of me.
However, this is me speaking in 2011. I do believe that I was correct that something was going on at Paramount, though. I was right on that one.
Because some of the episodes that aired appeared to be poking fun at me, saying I was stuck on myself, a sore sport and all this because my script got rejected. And there were other episodes that appeared to make fun of my Christian beliefs. See, there were a lot of New Agers at the studio, so I figured they didn't like me because of my Christianity. But I knew Brent never held it against me. But I knew I had enemies at Paramount. I smelled something going on there. I could tell by some of the episodes that aired on the show. They were playing mental games with me. But I was very generous with Star Trek, though.